Welcome to Sullivan Smart Sense. I'm Heather Sullivan. Thanks so much for being with us. We're going to talk about a really important topic today that I hope will help so many people who are struggling out there. We know a lot of people are really struggling with higher interest rates. It's raising debt on credit cards. People are seeing, rates now. We've seen averages over 20% the first time ever credit card interest. And we've also seen a 20% increase in bankruptcy filings. So things are getting really tough, I know, for a lot of people. So we have a fabulous expert today who's going to help us find ways to reduce credit card debt, manage debt, deal with collections if that's what you're dealing with, and when to decide whether you might need to file for bankruptcy, how to avoid it, and just kind of understanding more about all of that. So please join me in welcoming Leslie Tayne. She is a financial attorney based in New York. Thanks so much for being with us. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. Well, first, for our viewers, just tell us a little bit about your background, because I know you've always specialized in helping people with these particular issues.
Yeah, so I'm a financial attorney, and my firm strictly concentrates in helping consumers and business owners resolve debt and avoid bankruptcy. So a long history of negotiating with creditors like credit card companies, student loans, small debts, personal loans, and really helping individuals and consumers, business owners, getting to the other side of financial challenges.
Yeah, it sounds like you've really got expertise in the whole gamut of issues that I know so many people are struggling with. So it's so great to be able to talk with you. Well, first, let's just talk a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of we're seeing these higher interest rates. We know it's causing people to really struggle, fall behind. Give me a picture of what you're seeing as an attorney dealing with these issues in terms of the little bit of the financial crisis I think some people are facing.
There's no doubt that consumers are facing a financial crisis at this point, with the increase in cost for goods and services that are not commensurate with the increase in income. It's become really challenging to meet day-to-day expenses. So with that, we're seeing a surge in credit card debt. More and more people using credit cards as a supplement to their income, and therefore they now have large amounts of debt that's reoccurring. And with interest rates on the rise, again, it was just increased again recently. The credit card interest rates are definitely impacted by that. So consumers are starting to see that their regular day-to-day purchases, which are high to begin with, are even more expensive by putting items and charges on credit cards. So definitely a huge surge in the amount of debt that consumers and individuals are facing these days.
And I know one of the challenges that people are facing is when they can't afford some of their bills, they tend to put more things on the credit card. Maybe it's groceries, maybe they're paying utility bills. But let's talk about things you want to try and avoid putting on credit cards because of the debt situation.
You definitely want to try to avoid using a credit card as a supplement to your cash income. If you could find a way to look through your budget and figure out other ways for income sources to avoid using the credit cards, it's really important. For day-to-day expenses, a lot of people like to use credit cards for points and other types of benefits that credit cards can offer. If you're going to be able to pay that off and meet the obligation at the end of the month, then it makes sense to continue to use the credit cards. Credit cards are not something to necessarily avoid. They can be super useful. The challenge with credit card debt is that in the beginning of the month or the middle of the month, you forget what you've been charging on. And by the time the end of the month comes, you receive the bill, it really starts to add up. And if you can't meet the obligation to pay it off, and you meet only the minimum payment, you will pay interest. And that interest is higher than the minimum payment. So you're actually paying so much more for your purchases. So try to avoid putting things on that are large purchases that you're not going to be able to pay off.
Yeah, and it seems like you're just throwing money at the interest, and it doesn't seem like it's, the balance seems to be going down. Let's talk a little bit about, because a lot of people, they'll use their credit cards because they want rewards, the rewards that they're offered. But sometimes the chasing after the reward isn't worth the extra interest you're going to pay if you're not able to pay off that balance.
There's no doubt about that. And many credit cards come with an annual fee. So if there's an annual fee on the credit card, you want to calculate what does that annual fee equal per month and what benefit do you really get from the credit cards. If you're getting cash back, that's great. And in many cases, you can use the cash back to pay down the bill. And that's a great way to keep the bill down. But if you're not paying it off, your interest is going to exceed what it is that you're getting as a benefit. So it makes more sense to either pay cash or use a debit card or find a way to budget more appropriately using the credit card, but yet paying it off so you could really get the benefit of the credit card services.
Let's talk about one of the best ways out there to try and pay down credit card debt is to try and find a 0% balance transfer offer. I feel like we see more of these in certain markets and less of these in some markets. I feel like I'm not seeing them quite as often, but they are still out there, right? And can you talk about how that can help people?
They are still out there, the 0%. That product slowed down a little bit over the last few years. And the banks had reasons why they slowed down that product. But keep in mind that 0% is an introductory rate. And generally, when that rate expires, the interest rate will usually be higher than even your current rate. So it's enticing to get into a 0%. But there are some other things that consumers need to know, which is that there could be a balance transfer fee up to a certain percentage of the amount of money that you're transferring. That, coupled with the additional interest at the end of the introductory period, is something that you should calculate. It's not easy to do necessarily in your head, but it is something that you should put on a calculator and figure out. Keep in mind, too, every time you balance transfer, you change your credit reporting. So if you take out a new card or you apply for a 0%, that will hit your credit. If you pay down or you move credit around, it does make your credit score fluctuate. So something to keep in mind as well is the impact on the credit with 0% credit cards.
Let's talk about some of the other options to help people trying to pay down debt. Let's talk about personal loans and consolidation loans.
So there are lots of options to pay down debt, and some of them do include consolidation and personal loans. Consolidation is really an umbrella term, and there are a lot of products that fall under the consolidation term, including personal loans, debt settlement, different types of budgeting. There's also a not-for-profit, credit counseling. Bankruptcy could fall technically under a consolidation. So as a consumer, you want to know what it is that you're looking for when you're out there searching online or asking professionals for referrals. What are you looking to do? Are you looking for a loan? Today, it's very challenging to get a personal loan without excellent credit. And when I say excellent credit, usually 720, 740 and above would be considered excellent credit, along with steady and consistent cash flow. So remember that getting a personal loan also impacts your credit. And sometimes you could be robbing Peter to pay Paul in that you're just moving money around. If you're really looking to eliminate the debt, you have to look at your budget and consider what is the best option for you that's going to resolve the debt problems in the short term and the long term. And understanding what the cash flow issue is. Is it a temporary cash flow issue? Is your finances going to change? Is there going to be an interruption in your finances? All of that is going to impact your decision and ultimately what financial product you use to get out of debt.
Yes, sir. And at this point, too, people need to look at maybe ways that they can cut their spending and maybe increasing their income.
Absolutely. Cutting spending is the number one tool to financial health. Take a look at your budget on a regular basis. I understand that budgeting is not something most people want to do. You're not comfortable with it. You didn't grow up with it. It involves math. There's so much about budgeting that people don't like. But on a regular basis, if you just write down what your income is and your expenses are, you start to get into a really good financial habit, and it starts to become something that's in your mind and more memory, so that when you're out and you're making purchases, you know exactly what you can and cannot afford before you make a purchase using a particular financial product like a credit card. Finding ways to supplement income is really important too these days. There's lots of different ways to bring in other types of income to pay down debt and just supplement your income for savings. Now is a great time to put money in savings. So having extra cash flow by really tightening that budget, having less debt, and putting money into a standard online savings accounts are paying great interest rates now. So that should be the goal.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about collections, because I know we're seeing defaults increase on credit cards. We're seeing defaults increase on auto loans. What's your advice when someone is in a situation where the debt collectors are starting to contact them? What's your advice for people in terms of how to deal with that? Because I know it's a real nightmare for some people.
It is, and you're not alone. Debt collection is common. You're definitely not alone, and your feelings of isolation and challenges and not sleeping at night and arguing with your significant others about it is real, and it creates a lot of anxiety. So there are ways to deal with it. Before you speak to a debt collector and make any kind of promise or anything, it's really important to understand how much money you have available to pay the debt. And in some cases, you just might not have the money to pay the debt. So don't make promises to a debt collector because you feel pressure to do so. Don't sign anything without reading it, and don't agree to something that you do not intend to or you cannot within your budget fulfill. There often could be a lot of pressure from the debt collectors. And with that, it's important to understand that you need to take your time. Write down the information that you're getting from debt collectors. Tell them that you need some time to think about it. And again, if you're questioning what the debt is, ask them to provide you with proof that you owe the debt. It's not uncommon for people to come to me and say, I have no idea what this debt collector is even telling me. I don't remember this at all. So if you're not sure, ask for validation. Ask them to provide you information. Keep notes. That's really important so you can stay organized, because it's so stressful and it's difficult to remember what they're saying and the information.
You made a really good point, because I know there have been issues with there are scams out there people need to watch out for, where a debt collector will say you owe something that you've never owed, or maybe it's something that's so far back in your past that they're trying to sort of resurrect. So very good point. Let's talk a little bit about bankruptcy, because first, how do you know, what are some of the criteria when you need to start thinking about bankruptcy? And let's talk about ways to try and avoid it.
So if you're starting to think about bankruptcy as the only way out of your debt situation, it's important to seek out a local bankruptcy attorney who's well versed and can discuss with you the different types of bankruptcy. Generally, for consumers, you're looking at a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13. A Chapter 7 is one in which all your debts would be wiped out, and a Chapter 13 is one in which you would submit a plan to the bankruptcy court, and you would pay back a certain percentage of the debts that are owed. Both of them are complex. Both of them will impact your credit for up to 10 years and will have also lasting effects in terms of certain types of licensing, security clearance, and your ability to obtain insurance and other types of loans at good rates. So before you pull the trigger on a bankruptcy, be in the know. There are definitely alternatives to bankruptcy that are super successful if done right with the right organizations, and that can include debt settlement and debt resolution. So if you're starting to think about bankruptcy, you're not sure, the best place to start is, again, with your budget and what are the challenges. Are you just barely making it, or do you not have any money to even pay your regular day-to-day expenses, like you can't put food on the table and you can't pay your housing expenses? And if you're still challenged financially, there's lots of organizations, including local law schools and the bar associations, that can guide you appropriately to attorneys and clinics that could help you through the process of understanding what a bankruptcy would mean to you. And consider some of the alternatives. Like I said, there are some alternatives that are really great and will leave you with a lot more control and will help you get out of debt without the lasting impacts of bankruptcy.
Well, let's dive into some of those alternatives, because I'm sure that gives a lot of people some hope. You mentioned settlements and resolutions. What are those and how are they different?
Well, debt settlement is a way in which you hire a professional who understands how to renegotiate your debt. So generally what happens under those circumstances is that in order to renegotiate any kind of debt, you can't be current. That unfortunately is the reality of renegotiating debt. If you are current on your bills and you're still struggling, you can help yourself by contacting those creditors and asking for either a reduction in the interest rate or a new payment plan that meets your obligation. If you're not successful and you start to fall behind on your debt, debt settlement is a really good option. It's something that I work with on a regular basis. And done right, it can reduce the amount of debt that you pay and reduce your budget so your cash outlay every month is less, and therefore you can stay afloat on your day-to-day expenses. Again, it's really important to work with the right people, and there are lots of scams and solicitations out there. I do want to touch on that for 1 second, because it's important to understand that if you're not comfortable and you feel you're not sure, don't go forward with anything. No legitimate company is going to ask you for your information over the phone, including your social security number, your bank account information. But keep in mind, all of that information is easily found and bought and sold online. So just because somebody calls you or solicits you with that information, your social security number or your debt amount, who you owe to, that doesn't mean that's a legitimate organization. Do your research before you choose any solution, including bankruptcy, debt settlement, or debt consolidation of any kind.
Yeah, absolutely. Good advice. Talk a little bit about, like, how is a resolution, how is that different from, say, a settlement?
So debt resolution could include debt settlement, but it also could include a renegotiation of the interest rate only. There are options to do that, and a full balance repayment. So depending on the type of debt that you have, the delinquency status, your budget, that will really dictate what the ultimate solution is. Again, if you're on a very limited budget, it's unlikely that even debt settlement or debt relief or resolutions really going to be helpful for you. On a very tight budget where there's really no money to pay any of the bills, bankruptcy is probably a better solution under those circumstances.
When you see a number like that, bankruptcy filings are up 19-20% over the previous year. What are your thoughts when you're sort of looking at that on the front lines? Are we seeing, are you concerned people aren't exploring more of their options perhaps before going to that route? Or do you think those are really situations of people just being on the brink and that's the last option?
I think that a lot of people are unaware that there are alternatives to bankruptcy. I think traditionally bankruptcy, I can't pay my bills, I'm in debt, I have to file bankruptcy. And people are often pleasantly surprised to know that there are alternatives to bankruptcy that are legitimate. Unfortunately, over the course of years, there have been unscrupulous business practices that have sort of tainted the idea of debt settlement and debt resolution as being problematic. And the truth is, again, those solutions are terrific and really helpful if they're done right with the right people who are looking out for you and your situation. No two financial situations, and in 25 years of practicing in this area, are really the same. Even if there are two clients that have, let's say, American Express or Discover or Chase accounts, their individual financial needs, short and long-term circumstances surrounding that are very different. So you have a financial DNA. So understanding what works best for you is ideal. Unfortunately, again, I think that bankruptcy has always been the trigger, and I can't pay my bills, I'm just going to file bankruptcy. But again, there are really good alternatives. It does take a little bit of research and a little bit of work to find appropriate solutions where you're comfortable and it's actually going to work for you. And understanding what some of the consequences are to not just bankruptcy, but debt settlement, debt resolution, debt consolidation, and taking out additional loans.
What would be your advice to someone who's now, okay, these are some options I want to explore, but they really need to make sure they're finding a reputable person or firm that can help them? What would be your advice for someone trying to find the right people to deal with?
First, you can start out online, putting in the different types of debt resolution solutions. I would recommend a long search term, not doing something like debt help. I think if you make it very specific, you can find something that's more tailored to your needs. You have to have a budget. The first question we ask any potential client is, what's your budget? What are you looking to accomplish? How did you get here? So those are questions you need to ask yourself and be prepared. Putting together your debts, making a list of the debts, who you owe the money to, how much you owe, and where you're at, are you current or behind, are really important ways for you to be prepared to have an intelligent conversation with somebody and then start to think about, does this solution fit in my budget? if you're feeling pressure on any level, or you feel uncomfortable, you have a gut feeling that this doesn't sound right, or you're not sure where these people are located, then it's really important to say, you know what, I need some time to think about it. Ask for the paperwork, take your time. And I really encourage consumers to read the paperwork. If you don't understand what's in it and nobody's available to explain that to you, that's an immediate red flag.
Absolutely. Well, if people have more questions, Leslie, is there a way people can maybe reach out to you or your firm to get some more information?
Absolutely, and we do offer free phone consultations with certainly with our staff to discuss the different options. And you can reach me at tainelaw.com. That's www.tainelaw.com. And of course, I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, and I'm all out there under Leslie H. Tayne. So please feel free to reach out at any time with any questions about anything.
Awesome. Well, this was really great information, and I know it really shed a lot of light on different options for people. So hopefully, we are showing people they have more options if they are really struggling with how expensive things are these days. We know a lot of people are really hurting by that. So I really appreciate you sharing all of your experience and wisdom with us, Leslie.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the time.
You bet. And thank you so much for being with us as well. We will see you next time here on Sullivan Smart Sense. Keep those questions and comments and topics that you'd like us to cover coming, and we will try and answer all of your questions. We'll see you next time on Sullivan Smart Sense. Have a great day.